Good evening and welcome to another episode of Addiction Talk. The story of my guest tonight is eye opening. He is giving us an inside look at a world that many people don't get a chance to see, but it's important that we tell his story tonight. Take a listen. Jason Yamas is a queer writer, producer, director, and actor who's on a mission to bring awareness to the crystal meth crisis in the LGBTQ plus community. After struggling with Adderall addiction, Jason became addicted to crystal meth. In his recently released memoir, Tweakerworld, Jason chronicles his harrowing experience, including his life as one of the most prolific drug dealers in San Francisco and his eventual path to recovery in 2017. Addiction Talk starts now. Jason is joining us all the way from California to share more of his story tonight. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for having me, Joy. How are you tonight?
I am doing quite well here in Nashville. And we had to tell your story because, as I mentioned when I first opened up, that oftentimes people don't get a glimpse into this world. And you have busted this wide open, sharing exactly what you've experienced and being so transparent and vulnerable through your memoir, Tweakerworld. So I first want to get into this and
Yeah.
start with the very first question because many people look at you and you grew up, as you talk about often, in a suburban middle class family. And you never in a million years thought not only that you would find yourself in the throes of addiction, but battling a meth addiction and then going on to sell drugs in the community. So,
Yeah.
why do you think it's so important that we have this conversation?
Well, aside from Breaking Bad, nobody talks about crystal meth, and it is rampant in America, in the world, especially in queer communities. A lot of people don't know that. It's pretty much dismissed. People picture people with missing teeth and backwoods, meth labs and meth mouth is a common term that's used a lot of the time. I And we just dismiss it as like a hillbilly drug or something. It's not. That's not at all its hold. The queer community has been using it for a few decades now, in conjunction with sexual practices, often dangerous, risky sexual practices. But it heightens one's libido and sex drive in ways that is appealing to a lot of queer people. It also tends to quash a lot of shame and anxiety and depression, seemingly at first. A lot of people that have identity issues around their orientation or their gender will find it hard to participate in what is natural. And crystal meth opens a door for them to be able to do it, but of course, it ignores that idea ignores a lot of the dangers that come along with it.
Mhm. Well, let's go delve into your story. Take me
Yeah.
back because I
Right.
understand for you, Jason, and this happens for a lot of people that we hear. You started out, it wasn't like one day you started out and you just went directly to crystal meth.
Mm-mm.
There was this process or this progression that happened. And I know you started out with prescription drugs, Adderall. So,
Right.
how did it start for you with the Adderall? And how did you end up going from Adderall, getting it from a prescription, to actually going on the streets to get crystal meth?
So what I had not known is that Adderall is an amphetamine. It's crystal methamphetamine. They are essentially very similar, chemically speaking. And I had been taking Adderall prescribed at first, and then I supplemented it as my addiction to Adderall spiraled out of control. I was a perfectionist. I was a media producer. I was somebody who was eager to please, and wanted to be viewed as somebody who was productive and giving, and who could take care of all of my loved ones and all the people in my life. And I never wanted to show any type of flaws whatsoever, and it's just not possible as a human. You're going to screw up. So setting that bar for myself, and then I began to rely on this chemical component. Kids often will take Adderall, abuse Adderall. College students, a lot of the time, studying for exams. That's when you hear about it the most. So I understand that urge to want to be better, to be able to think more clearly, and it seems like a miracle drug at first, right?
Mm.
You're able to more concisely speak, and more creatively create, and yet, you end up not sleeping enough, and it does take the toll after a while. So I was abusing Adderall for a long time, and
And
then
how
I got
long
to
did
the
you
point.
say is a long time? Were you on it for like several years before it got to the point of the meth?
I was on it for 2.5 or 3 years
Mm.
before it started with 10 milligrams prescribed to me, and then by the final few months I was taking 120 milligrams a day. I had different dealers in different cities, people shipping it to me. I mean, I would get creative, as addicts do, to be able to get what we think we need, what our body tells us we need. So when I was no longer able to get Adderall, my prescription was up, the dealer had dried up. I had found an article that was written by a pediatrician, that was
Mm.
supposed to sway parents who were prescribing their children, perhaps have them think otherwise, letting them know crystal meth is chemically essentially the same as, I mean, it is not the same, but it's very
It
close.
works similarly, right?
First or second cousins. And so, this article meant to dissuade parents from giving their children Adderall. I said, oh, well, if it's the same as crystal meth, I could just find, I know where to find crystal meth. As a gay man, I know how to find crystal meth. It's on my smartphone. There are these sex apps, hookup apps, that queer people gravitate toward, which is a whole other conversation of why they exist. But on those apps are dealers selling crystal meth because they know that there is a market for it, because of what I was saying at the top. This lifestyle, it's called party and play.
Mm.
P&P for short. Chemsex is another term that they use in the UK and in Europe, to describe it, and it's the combination of unsafe, dangerous sexual practices with crystal meth and another drug called G that I could talk about in a little bit later. But because there's a market for it, there are people on these apps like Grinder selling it, using coded language on these apps, to saying things like clouds, or T for Tina, which is a street nickname for crystal meth. They used to call it crank back in the 90s. Now it's called Tina, which is a cute name, isn't it?
Mm.
To name it after a woman. It's a bit bizarre. I actually get very plugged in by all of the nicknaming,
So
because
let
it
me
just
ask you
takes.
this as you're talking about this. So, Jason, you're going on there, you realize your prescription for Adderall, you're not able to get it. You're not, the dealer who you were getting it from, it drives up. You see this article that says it's the same, and you say, I know where to get it. But was there a fear? Because I think, like you said, many of us see the images of what we believe someone who's addicted to meth will look like. Was there this fear like, I can't dabble in this? I'm on a prescription, I'm safe, but I'm opening myself up to a whole new world.
There is that fear, but it pales in comparison to the niggling, that in your brain and in your body when you're addicted, when you're
Mhm.
chemically addicted to something, and you need to satiate that. You have to quench that thirst. It just gets quashed. You put aside the feelings of fear. If gosh, if fear could save us addicts,
Mm.
we would have a much different landscape in America, wouldn't we? It's not just that; it's so many other components that have to go into making the decision to stay away or to remove ourselves from the drugs, and also the lifestyle. The lifestyle is another huge component. So, um, So no, I was not scared enough, but slightly, slightly scared. I was also able to justify it because I wasn't getting it to for it to be a lifestyle drug. I wasn't doing it so I could go have anonymous group sex like all of those addicts over there were. I was just doing it to be productive, to be a great filmmaker, to be a good son, to be a good friend, a good lover. These are the justifications that you tell yourself. So you don't feel like you are among the degenerates, the addicts.
Mm. So once you started taking it, Jason, how quickly for you did it get progressively worse? Was it after the first time, or did you feel in your mind you were managing it and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I need to do more.
Mhm.
This is kind of
It
getting out of control.
it so I was once I started on crystal meth, I was mostly doing it all the time for until I got clean a year and a half later. And doing it, I can only speak from somebody who is doing it with that type of frequency, but it took me a few months before it turned sour.
Mm.
For the most part, I was elated. I felt like when I was walking, I was wearing a jetpack. I felt like I was gravitating above everything. I mean, I really, I felt like I was on a cloud.
Mm.
Invincible. Things would happen to me especially once I got into the crime component, which I know we'll get into at some point. Things would happen to me. I mean, literally, like you know, having a gun pointed at my head, being in car chases, things like this, and I was able to feel thrill instead of fear, channel the fear into thrill. That's how confusing these chemicals are to the brain, and to the heart. They completely contort natural emotions and make them appear as something that they are not.
Mhm. Did people around you start to notice? Did people say anything? Or were you able to, because I know you said you wanted to be the perfect filmmaker, and you're in the acting scene, and you're, also trying to be the perfect son. So were people starting to notice, or were you able to conceal it for a long time?
Um, I got caught. I got found out quite quickly by my partner and family, and I think I had everybody going for a few months that I was on the up and up. But had they been around me, they would have known otherwise. My brother, my poor sweet brother, I was living with him at the time, and he was certainly in heavy denial because there was no
Mhm.
way with my manic behavior that somebody that didn't that was seeing things clearly would have noticed that the behaviors were just ridiculous, and the outbursts and the anger and then the massive swings of joy too. But what I did and what a lot of addicts do is you run away. You
Mm.
don't let the people that you are accountable to see you. So I surrounded myself with other people doing crystal meth, and other people in this lifestyle. That's why one of the reasons why I ended up in the criminal side of it was I knew I couldn't function working a normal job any longer. I had to make crystal meth my occupation, my reason to get up in the morning. Not that I was sleeping at night, but yeah, just I surrounded myself with other tweakers because you don't your lifestyle doesn't look so bad when it looks like everyone else's.
Hmm. And you use the term, and I know that's the title of your book, Tweakerworld, but for someone who doesn't know what a tweaker is, can you explain
Mhm.
that to us?
Yeah, quite simply, it's somebody who uses crystal meth
Mhm.
regularly enough to. I do in the book. I go into what tweaking out is, and we use it differently. But there's different types of tweakers. There's the artistic tweaker who will spend all day painting a canvas and then covering it in black and then repainting something over it, and just there's a musical tweakers. There's a lot of creative types that will think that they are making something, but really they're just going in this cycle. It's and to nowhere.
Mhm.
It's a lot of self delusion.
Mhm. So when you got into this world, you transition, well, not really transition, but I guess you end up deciding, okay, in order to continue this what I'm dealing with and continue getting the crystal meth, I've got to get into the selling part of it. How did that happen for you? And when did you know that, oh my gosh, I'm really in deep and I need help? Or
Oof.
did you ever really realize that? Was it more of people coming to you and saying to you, you're close, you could end up in jail or anything could happen or you could
Oh
die.
yeah. Uh-huh. Everyone was telling me that. I mean, the people I was selling crystal meth to were like, "You are so far gone,"
Mm,
because when you do it for so long and you are not sleeping, you end up with a drug-fueled psychosis, which I certainly did, and I spent the last several months of my usage in a very deep psychosis where one moment somebody would be my friend, but next they were an informant, and or they were the person across the street was just an old man walking with his walker, but nope, he's an agent working for the DEA.
mm,
It just your reality is constantly shifting. And I was falling asleep while driving. I mean, just getting in car accidents. All the signs pointed to this guy's got to get out of here, and I
and how
ignored
deep were
all of
you
them.
in it when it comes to even the drug side of it, like the selling of the drugs?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty massive. To start, I had gotten in a car crash. There is another drug that pairs with crystal meth called GHB is its more common name. It's a depressant, and it comes in liquid form. You mix it with a sugary beverage because it literally, if you were to take it without a dilutant, it would just completely burn off all of the lining of your esophagus going down. It's
Mm,
like hydrochloric acid in that way, which is insane. That a lot of people in gay culture use this drug, even people that don't do crystal meth, but it's inherently intertwined with crystal meth in this lifestyle. That drug, when you take too much of it, you'll fall out, which means passing out, but you have no idea it's coming.
mm,
You could be as hyper and as talkative and awake as I seem right now, and then I'll be out like that. And that
mm,
happened to me while I was driving for a rideshare company and had a passenger in the car. And I
mm.
had to bullshit my way, as addicts are so good at doing, uh, until they're not. I had to bullshit my way into a story of what happened, and there was a bumblebee that stung me, and that's how we got in this car crash. And ultimately, these things pile up, and you can't excuse them away any longer. So I was not able to function, as I said, like with a normal job. I couldn't even drive for the rideshare company anymore. So I started driving for a drug dealer, and I was meeting all of these people at these sex parties that were customers, and then I was driving for a drug dealer, so I was connecting the two of them. And I'm a social being, so I was a bit of a connector. And then I was finding that the drug dealers often are lazy and don't show up when they say they're going to. Believe it or not, and that's not how I was raised. I was raised in my family's restaurants and hotel, and I have a strong work ethic. So I was like, you know what, all of these drug dealers that I'm introducing to these clients, they're never showing up. So the clients would call me and be like, "Where's the guy that you introduced me to? He never shows up unless you're driving him." So I had the epiphany. I said, "Oh, well, you know what? I could do this better than all of them."
Mm,
And really, when you look at that after many years of therapy, what I was really admitting to myself was I need to feel important. I need to feel loved. I need to have a purpose. I need to make people happy. I'm not making my family and my friends and my ex boyfriend happy anymore. The life that I thrown away due to my addiction
mm,
is not, they're not there for me anymore. These are my new family. These other drug addicts and queer folk that I met up in San Francisco. I'll make them happy. I'll make them proud of me. I will
mm.
put smiles on their faces. I will be the jubilant voice walking through the door at the hotel party. So oh, I'm noticing messages popping up. Oh,
Yeah,
how
somebody
cool.
was saying your story is so profound.
Thank you so much. So yeah, that's really what it amounted to was
And that's how you became one of the largest drug dealers in the area, is saying, "I can
I
do
can do
this."
it better. I can do it better. Yeah, yeah. Like, and then it was like, all right, well, how do I make money from this? Because I always told myself I'm not going to be here that long. I'll make enough money to get out and
Mm.
fund my first feature film. And then I started telling myself, oh, the film has got to be about this because nobody knows about this world. Truly, to this day, I mean,
Mm.
my book is the first comprehensive narrative account of this. There are a few books that discuss the party and play and crystal meth epidemic from a scientific and or a clinical perspective, but in terms of
Not
like here is my
firsthand, like
story,
living.
no, and it needs to happen. I really didn't write the book purely as I mean, all authoring, all memoir. I think it has a bit of narcissism attached to it. You pay attention to my story, but I truly, yes, I want that. I do want love to be loved, but or to have attention given to me. But at the same time, there are so many other people whose stories are more compelling than mine and more heartbreaking than mine, and they deserve to be told. So I was really hoping with the publication of this book that it would open up doors for other people to tell their stories, and I intend to try to do my best to help that happen.
Mhm. Well, take me, Jason. I know, of course, we want people to read the book because you're giving them the inside world. But for those who
Mhm.
are watching tonight, when you look out and you think about what many people don't see, what did you see and experience, if you could say it in a few words, inside that world?
Oh my gosh. Some of the things it's hard to recount. Specifically, what in what can you ask me the question again?
Okay.
I'm afraid I'm gonna ramble off visuals, and I want
No,
to
but
make sure I'm
I
getting
guess,
to
you
to
know,
the
you were
heart of the
saying
matter.
that, one, a lot of people don't know what's going on in this world where you're
Yeah.
talking about the
Mhm.
party and play world, the crystal meth epidemic within the queer community, what is really going on. It's like you said, most
Mm.
people are not
Okay.
realizing they
Curious.
have this vision in their head of who someone who's struggling with meth looks like, and that's not what it is. So what is it
Right.
from what
Okay.
you saw?
When I found, I would ask people about their lives. What do you do? I had former psychologists and a surgeon, a barista. I mean, it could be anybody. It could be a meth
Mm,
addict, and you would have no idea. They just seem a little hyper. And it's scary. So to see how it has its grips on people of all colors and creeds and classes and occupations. It does not discriminate. Addiction never does, but especially meth addiction, especially in the queer community. What I was confronted with was so much sadness and
mm,
so much gay shame. So many people that weren't able to admit to themselves that um, they hated who they were because they were programmed by
mm,
society to hate who they were. They were told by their church leader or their parents or kids in school and made fun of for being the thing that they just are.
mm.
So you see it. You see it all the time with straight or queer people, but a lot of queer people.
So you saw
With
like
alcohol, you see it with alcohol. There's like alcoholism is rampant in the queer community too. It's the same beast. It's just that
Mhm.
nobody's shining a light on crystal meth, and it's becoming deadlier and deadlier. That's another thing that thank God that I got out when I did,
Mhm.
because back in 2016, things weren't laced with fentanyl like they are now.
Mm.
And I hear stories of people that I knew that were in that world that did not get out, that
Mm.
ultimately left because of an accidental overdose because it was laced with fentanyl, which is happening more and more.
Wow. So when you look back on it, you think the reason why we're seeing this growing crisis is because of the pain and the identity, like you talked about. And so that is what you feel is kind of fueling this.
Yeah, and I think that that's true of addiction as a whole, but specifically within queer identity. It's only until recently, and not everywhere that queer people we're given rights, and we're told that they are valuable, and that they are, even with the rest, that they are equal with everyone else. I mean, we have generational trauma,
Mm,
of, like, the the generation before mine watched an entire, half of the population, of the queer population, be completely wiped out by the plague that was AIDS, and HIV. Before that, you weren't allowed to hold hands or kiss in public without going to jail. I mean, to be told the thing that makes you happy, the thing that completes you, the thing that brings you joy
mhm,
and pleasure is wrong. That kind of pain goes quite deep, and takes, an immense amount of recovery, and processing, or not, or people just try to quash it with the chemicals, and
mm.
that's the avenue I ended up on.
Mhm. And why do you think there's been the relation with the Kim sex part of it? I see the pain part that you said people are going to the meth and things like that to quell, the feelings and what they're dealing with. But why do you think it also got combined in to becoming part of like this sexual experience as well? I know you said there was some euphoria with that, but how do you think that also came to be as part of this?
Yeah, well, the sexual acts are the manifestation of one's queerness.
Mm,
That's the expression of one's queerness, and not, it's widely known that queer people are often, I don't know if promiscuous is the right word, can be more promiscuous than heterosexual people, and, we're told that that's a shameful thing too, that group sex or that casual sex, to these degrees. It's joked about in media a lot, of how men will just be on the app and say, I'm looking right now, and then, 10 minutes later be having sex with that stranger, and, old ideologies would tell you that that's wrong. Personally, that's not for me anymore, but
mhm,
that's a choice. But I support anybody that does want to satiate those sexual urges in those ways. That is valid. But we're told it's not. So since sexual, practice is the manifestation of queerness, this gives one permission to explore that, to
mhm,
do. I won't get into the details, but to do things that maybe, you would think, gross, otherwise, or you've been told to think is gross. This, it lowers inhibitions, crystal meth, to a great extent. Too much, in my view, far too much in my view, to the
mhm,
point where, brutality and violence,
mhm,
and some risky, dangerous, fantasies can get played out. So there are
mhm.
lines. There are lines. Where those lines should be, that's a larger discussion.
Did you feel like when you were in the midst of it that it was dangerous, that it was a dangerous world to be in the midst of this?
Um, did I think it? Yes, I didn't feel that though. I
Mm,
felt, I felt. I mean, logically, I knew. Okay, I'm increasing the risk for sexually transmitted infections. I'm increasing the risk for HIV, for rape, which happens. People pass out, on
mhm,
some of these drugs, as I was saying, on G, and will be, sexually assaulted, as some sort of. That's what I was talking about in terms of where the sexual liberation can go too far. People will take, liberties that are, dangerous and abusive. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent, I think, but,
no, no, you didn't. I think you gave
bring me
us
back, Joy. Bring me back.
no, Jason, I think you gave us some really good insight because you see the pain, and then we understand how the combination of that came to be where we're seeing this crisis in the queer community as it relates to that. So how did you get out? I do know from
Mhm.
doing research on your story and learning more about you, that your parents, your family staged an intervention. Did that
It
work? Or
it
what did
did
it
not.
take to finally pull you out of this? in the
They
midst of,
really tried.
you
And
know,
you should try.
the
You
whole
should try.
situation.
My grip on this world was so deep. Interventions do work. They really do, because a lot of the people that you're trying to save want to be saved. I just was not there yet. And because I had made crystal meth my entire world, I mean, at that point, I owed money to the Mexican cartel when they were trying to do my intervention, and I was like, "There's no way I'm leaving. I'm paying these bitches off first, like."
Mhm.
So my story was elevated in that way. But they do work, and I could have imagined a scenario in which an intervention that occurred later might have worked. But ultimately, I had to just hit a natural rock bottom. I had
What was
to.
that rock
Uh,
bottom? What was that
well,
natural rock bottom, Jason?
oh my gosh! Well, I'd lost everything. I mean everything,
Even
everything.
wait, even though you were selling and people think, and I know before we were talking about this kind of
Uh,
before we started the episode, that people think,
yeah.
oh, you had all this money, you were,
Mhm.
selling crystal meth, you were connected to the cartel, that you were going to use it to make this film, like all these ideas you had in your head, but in the
Mhm.
reality of it,
Yeah. The reality was, no matter what level you're at, the chaos that is inherent with addiction will usually wipe out any of the riches. And there were certainly, I landed in almost $100,000 of debt when I left.
mm,
My car had been repossessed. I had multiple rental cars that had been crashed. I mean, just like I owed the city of San Francisco like $15,000 in parking tickets and towing fees. I mean, it was just lunacy when you're
mm,
trying to function at the level that I was at. But I was just one person, and I was in psychosis. I spent two
mm,
days driving from invisible entities,
mm,
running from things that didn't exist. So yeah, chaos comes from abusing drugs, no matter what level you're working at. That's why they say don't get high on your own supply. I mean, I wish I had followed that advice. Maybe I would have walked with some money, but no, I walked with an immense amount of debt. So I had lost everything. I'd lost my car. I had pawned my phone. I had nothing. I ended up getting sick on the side of the street, having to call my ex-boyfriend collect and say I'll go to rehab. And it took them, yeah, sedating me,
mm,
and several days of me trying of them trying to convince me again to go to rehab. Even once I got to rehab, I tried to escape twice, and it
mm,
was ultimately the sorry to ruin it for you, but it's still worth buying the book. But it was ultimately my father. My father had reached out to me when I was about to board a flight back to San Francisco. I had left rehab against the doctor's wishes, and
mhm,
I was about to get on that flight and go start chapter two of my Tweakerworld adventures. And he wrote me and said, if you get on that plane, you'll never hear from me again. And
mm,
I had nearly lost him. There's a section of the book, I won't get into that right now, but I had nearly lost him earlier that year. And I
mm,
know my dad was not messing around.
mm,
So I believed him, and I was not willing. I knew everyone else would forgive me
mm,
on the other side of it. Not everyone did, but I suspected that my family and nearest and dearest friends would forgive me. But I knew when my dad said that he would write me off. That I was losing, ultimately, severing ties from a family member that who I had always longed to have a deeper connection with.
mm.
It's a theme in the book as well. So to believe that, I turned around and I went back and I finished rehab.
Wow, Jason. That is so powerful because, many parents think, the difference between enabling and supporting and knowing when you should do that tough love. And for so many parents, that's so hard to like say, I'm going to walk away if
Yeah,
you do this.
yeah.
But then to hear from you that tough love from your dad of saying, you're going to lose me, and you feeling that was
Mhm.
the one thing that made you go back.
Yeah.
Wow,
Um,
that
they need
is
to mean it. They really need to. If my mom had said it, I would have never believed her. Um, so yeah, tough love can be very effective.
Wow. So from that point forward, we're looking at 2017. You
Yep.
found recovery
Hmm.
and you have been living on this new journey
So
of
much better over
sobriety.
here. Yeah.
You were rebuilding your life. So going through the journey to finally getting to the point that you listened to your father and you went to back to rehab, what was different this time for you and what clicked to help get you to where you are today? And we're looking at, more, I guess, almost 6 years or more, or close to 6 years.
Yeah. No, it's over 6 years. So it's over 6 years.
Yeah.
What clicked? That's a good question, Joy. I just knew there was something else. There was something else that was great that I could do. I'd always wanted to make films and to tell stories, and I had struggled to do that for so many years. And I spent so much of my energy and time supporting other people's passion projects. So I said, if I'm going to stick to this new lifestyle of sobriety, I have to show something. I have to create something. I always tell people, they say, well, what should I expect on the other side of it? And it's like, at first, a lot of boredom,
Mm,
because drugs are fun, even as dangerous as they are. They are fun, and pleasurable often until they're not. But um, it's exciting to be a drug addict until it isn't. And so you will miss the thrill of it, the rush of it, especially uppers. I mean, that was crystal meth. It was go go go. Especially the way I was doing it. So get used to being bored at first, but then you find excitement in the small things. The more you accept the mundanity of it all. But the biggest thing is to really look inside and see what is the thing you want to accomplish in this life. And it can be
mm,
as simple as, I want to design my own garden, or for me it was, I want to write a book, as it turned
mm,
out. And now it's, I want to make a TV show about the book, and I want to
mm,
expose this world, to everybody that has no idea about it.
mm.
That's my goal now.
Mhm. And what do you think will happen by exposing this world? Like, if there was one thing, I know you said you started with the book, we're looking at a TV show, you're rebuilding your career, you're a film producer again, you're acting, directing, getting into all of that. What is that?
I think it is looking at addiction from a more expansive, macro, perspective. So many of the TV and film about it are so depressing, and
Mm,
and alienating. That could
mm,
never be me. But addiction shows up and destroys people's lives in all forms. I'm expecting that and I know from people that have read the book, and I'm expecting when I have a TV show about it, that people are going to see themselves in this
mm,
Jason character, because maybe their addiction is to food or to social media or to all the myriad things that we, in this go 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 lifestyle in 2023 that we're in now. um, Addiction has never been more,
mm,
and there are ways of restructuring the brain and adding discipline, and just making other choices. I mean, they're not easy, and it's incremental, and it's slow, and it's hard, but it's worth it. So worth
mm.
it.
Well, I only have two last questions for you, Jason.
Yeah.
First, what do you hope two or three things that people learn from your journey? If there were two
Mm.
or three things, whether it's someone who's in the midst of struggling or a family member, I mean, you've already given us so many just things to think about. But if there were something that you would hope two or three things that people learn from your story, what would that be?
Mhm. Um, that nobody's in too deep.
Mm,
That even if you think, I've talked to people in that world that I said I've gone back since being clean many years and feeling that that was safe enough for me to do so. And I've talked to addicts that are still in their active addiction and said, do you ever want to get out? And I said, well, there's nothing for me over there. I don't have any friends on that side. My whole world is over here. And I believe that's true for some of these people. But I've also talked to people that have gotten out after 20 years and have made new friends and found new passions and discovered new things about themselves. So you're never in too deep.
Good. That's
That's
good.
yeah. Uh, and yeah, you're never in too deep. It's never too late. I that queer people, our stories are not being told in a serious way yet. We're just starting to scratch the surface. And by the way, you know more queer people than you think you do.
Mm,
The fact that gender identity and an openness around queerness is become we've shined so much more of a light on it. People are feeling the ability to come out more often. I'm sure in 20 years the queer population will be much higher than it has been. We've always been there. So it's important to shine a light on these stories and to understand what it is to be othered by society at large, and the repercussions of that. And it's cyclical, and it's a disease, and we could use your support. Do you want another thing?
I do. I do. You're
uh,
just dropping all types of golden nuggets over here, Jason.
um, read books. Read books. Yeah, I want to make it a TV show, but uh, read people's stories. Or listen to them. There's a lot of audiobooks out there, and I think people have gotten away from it. But you're never gonna have as intimate of an understanding of a
Mm.
world that you don't know about from listening to a podcast or watching this. Which thank you for watching. But read books, and if not mine, read one that you care more about. But read books.
Mhm. I think that's such good wisdom. And the one thing that I wanted to end with tonight is your relationship now with your father.
Mm,
I have
yeah,
to touch on that because honestly, Jason, when you shared that, I don't know what it was about it, but it just hit me,
yeah,
that that was your father who did that. It's making me a little
yeah.
emotional. I'm not sure why. Maybe because my father
I
is
get it.
deceased, but the love of a father to do that. So I'm just curious, like, what is your relationship now with your father and him seeing that that was what turned you around and now more than 6 years in recovery?
Yeah, I called him before the book came out. I said, "It is up to you whether you read this or not. I don't think it's going to be easy for you to, but I do want to tell you everything that's in it." So I outlined, the first time I brought my first boyfriend to this wedding, and you turned away, shocked, and it felt like revulsion. I think it was more surprise, but the way he behaved at this wedding, in response to learning that his firstborn son was gay, was quite heartbreaking and stuck with me. And I pushed that aside for so long. So I said, and it's in this book, and I'm telling the whole world that this happened. And
Mhm.
he wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't. He was so humble, and he apologized. He said, I've thought about
Mm.
that for years, and I've just felt so terrible. It's given Writing this book has given us an opportunity to have a more open and honest and loving relationship than we ever did have before.
Mm.
So yeah, the tough love fucking worked, in that respect, and we definitely talk more often than we ever have, and about things that we didn't used to, and yeah, couldn't. I'm very lucky. Not everybody gets that. I'm grateful for it.
Wow. Well, Jason, it has been delightful to talk to you and for you to be so
Thank you.
transparent and so honest about your story. And I know that somebody's life is going to be impacted because not only did you write this book, but you showed up on Addiction Talk to share your
Yeah.
story with us. So we are grateful. And thank
Well,
you
thank
all
you so much.
for watching tonight. And that's going to do it for
Yeah.
another episode of Addiction Talk. Good night.
Thank you so much.